Chapter 10. Ledger. I'm in the dugout pulling the equipment out of the bag when Grady slips his fingers through the chain-link fence, gripping it. So? Who is she? I pretend not to know what he's talking about. Who is who? The girl you had in your truck last night. Grady's eyes are bloodshot. It looks like the night shift change is taking a toll on him. A customer. I was just giving her a ride home. Grady's wife, Whitney, is standing next to him now. At least the rest of the mom brigade isn't with her, because I can tell immediately by the way she's looking at me that everyone on the t-ball field is already talking. I can only be confronted by one couple at a time. Grady said you had a girl in your truck last night. I shoot Grady a look, and he holds his hands up helplessly, like his wife yanked the information out of him. It was no one, I repeat. Just giving a customer a ride home. I wonder how many times I'm going to have to repeat this today. Who is she? Whitney asks. No one you know. We know everyone around here, Grady says. She's not from here, I say. I might be lying, I might be telling the truth. I wouldn't know since I know very little about her. Other than what she tastes like. Destin has been working on his swing, Grady says, changing the subject to his son. Wait till you see what he can do. Grady wants to be the envy of all the other fathers. I don't get it. T-ball is supposed to be fun, but people like him put so much competitiveness into it and ruin the sport. 2 weeks ago, Grady almost got into a fight with the umpire. He probably would have hit him if Roman hadn't pushed him off the field. Not sure getting that heated over a t-ball game is a good look for anyone. But he takes his son's sports very seriously. Me, not so much. Sometimes I wonder if it's because DM isn't my daughter. If she were, would I get angry over a sport that doesn't even keep score? I don't know that I could love a biological child more than I love DM, so I doubt I'd be any different when it comes to their sports. Some of the parents assume that since I played professional football I'd be more competitive. I've dealt with competitive coaches my whole life, though. I agreed to coach this team specifically to prevent some competitive asshole from coming in and setting a bad example for DM. The kids are supposed to be warming up, but DM is standing behind home plate shoving t-balls into the pockets of her baseball pants. She's got 2 in each pocket, and now she's trying to shove a third in. Her pants are starting to sag from the weight. I walk over to her and kneel. D, you can't take all the t-balls. They're dragon eggs, she says. I'm going to plant them in my yard and grow baby dragons. I toss the balls one at a time to Roman. That's not how dragons grow. The mama dragon has to sit on the eggs. You don't bury them in the yard. DM bends forward to pick up a pebble, and I notice she has 2 balls stuffed down the back of her shirt. I untuck her shirt, and the balls fall to her feet. I kick them to Roman. Did I grow in an egg? She asks. No, D. You're a human. Humans don't grow in eggs, we grow in, I stopped talking because I was about to say, we grow in our mothers' bellies, but I'm always careful to avoid any talk of mothers or fathers around DM. I don't want her to start asking me questions I can't answer. What do we grow in? She asks. Trees? Shit. I put my hand on DM's shoulder and completely ignore her question because I have no idea what Grace or Patrick has told her about how babies are made. This isn't my wheelhouse. I wasn't prepared for this conversation. I yell for all the kids to go to the dugout, and luckily DM is distracted by one of her friends and walks away from me. I blow out a breath, relieved the conversation ended where it did. I dropped Roman off at the bar to spare him a trip to McDonald's. And yes, we're at McDonald's even though DM didn't wear her cleats at all during the game, because she gets her way with me more often than she doesn't. Choose your battles, they say. But what happens when you never choose any? I don't want to play t-ball anymore, DM says out of the blue. She's dipping her French fry into honey when she makes that decision. The honey dribbles down her hand. I try to get her to eat her fries with ketchup because it's a lot easier to clean, but she wouldn't be DM if she didn't do everything the hardest way possible. You don't like t-ball anymore? She shakes her head and licks her wrist. That's fine. But we only have a few more games, and you made a commitment. What's a commitment? It's when you agree to do something. You agreed to be a part of the team. If you quit in the middle of the season, your friends will be sad. You think you can make it through the rest of the season? If we can have McDonald's after all the games. I narrow my eyes in her direction. Why do I feel like I'm getting swindled? What does swindled mean? She asks. It means you're trying to trick me into getting you McDonald's. DM grins and eats her last fry. I put all our trash on the tray. I grab her hand to lead her out of the store and remember the honey. Her hands are as sticky as a flytrap. I keep wet wipes in my truck for this very reason. A couple of minutes later, she's buckled up in her booster seat and I'm scrubbing her hands and arms with the wet wipe when she says, "When is my mom getting a bigger car?" She drives a minivan. How big of a car does she need? Not Nana, DM says. My mom. Skylar said my mom never comes to my t-ball games, and I told her she will when she gets a bigger car. I stop wiping her hands. She never brings up her mother. This is twice in one day we've brushed the conversation. I guess she's getting to that age, but I have no idea what Grace or Patrick has told her about Kenna, and I have absolutely no idea why she's asking about her mother's car. Who told you your mom needed a bigger car? Nana. She said my mom's car isn't big enough and that's why I live with her and no. That's confusing. I shake my head and throw the wipes in a sack. I don't know. Ask your Nana. I close her door and text Grace as I'm circling around to the driver's side of my truck. Why does DM think her mother isn't in her life because she needs a bigger car? We're a few miles away from McDonald's when Grace calls. I make sure not to answer it on speaker. Hey. DM and I are on our way back. It's my way of letting Grace know I can't say much on my end. Grace sucks in a breath like she's getting ready for a long explanation to my text. Okay, so last week, DM asked me why she doesn't live with her mother. I didn't know what to say, so I told her she lives with me because her mother's car isn't big enough to fit all of us. It was the first lie I could come up with. I panicked, Ledger. I'd say so. We plan on telling her, but how do you tell a child her mother went to prison? She doesn't even know what prison is. I'm not judging, I say. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. We should probably come up with a more accurate version of the truth, though. I know. She's just so young. She's starting to get curious. I know. Just, if she asks again, tell her I'll explain it to her. I did. Prepare for questions. Great, she says with a sigh. How did the game go? Good. She wore the red boots. And got McDonald's. Grace laughs. You're a sucker. Yeah. Tell me something new. See you soon. I end the call and glance into the back seat. DM's face is full of concentration. What are you thinking, D? I want to be in a movie, DM says. Oh yeah? You want to be an actress? No, I want to be in a movie. I know. That's called being an actress. Then, yeah, that's what I want to be. An actress. I want to be in cartoons. I don't tell her cartoons are just voices and drawings. I think you'd be a great cartoon actress. I will be. I'm gonna be a horse or a dragon or a mermaid. Or a unicorn, I suggest. She grins and looks out her window. I love her imagination, but she definitely didn't get it from Scotty. His mind was more concrete than a sidewalk.
Chapter 11. Kenna. I've never seen a picture of DM. I don't know if she looks like me or Scotty. Are her eyes blue or brown? Is her smile honest like her father's? Does she laugh like me? Is she happy? That's my only hope for her. I want her to be happy. I have complete faith in Grace and Patrick. I know they loved Scotty, and it's obvious they loved Diem. They loved her before she was even born. They started fighting for custody the day they were told I was pregnant. The baby didn't even have fully developed lungs, but they were already fighting for its first breath. I lost the custody battle before Diem was even born. There aren't many rights a mother has when she's sentenced to several years in prison. The judge said, because of the nature of our situation and the duress I'd caused to Scotty's family, he could not, in good conscience, honor my request for visitation rights. Nor would he force Scotty's parents to maintain the relationship between my daughter and me while I was in prison. I was told I could petition the court for rights upon my release, but since my rights were terminated, there's probably very little I can do. Between Diem's birth and my release almost 5 years later, there has been little anyone could, or would, do for me. All I have is this intangible hope I try to cling to with childlike hands. I was praying Scotty's parents just needed time. I assumed ignorantly that they would eventually see a need for me to be in Diem's life. There wasn't much I could do from my isolated position in the world, but now that I'm out, I've thought long and hard about how I should go about this. I have no idea what to expect. I don't even know what kind of people they are. I only met them once when Scotty and I were dating, and that didn't go over very well. I've tried to find them online, but their profiles are extremely private. There wasn't a single picture of Diem online that I could locate. I even looked up all of Scotty's friends whose names I could remember, but I couldn't remember very many, and all their profiles were private. I knew very little about Scotty's life before he met me, and I wasn't with him long enough to truly get to know his friends or his family. 6 months out of the 22 years he lived. Why is everyone from his life so locked down? Is it because of me? Are they afraid of this very thing happening? Me showing up? Me hoping to be a part of my daughter's life? I know they hate me, and they have every right to hate me, but part of me has been living with them for the past 4 years in Diem. My hope is that they've found a sliver of forgiveness for me through my daughter. Time heals all wounds, right? Except I didn't leave them with a simple wound. I left them with a casualty. One so heartbreaking there's a possibility it will never be forgiven. It's hard not to cling to hope, though, when all I've been able to do or look forward to is this moment. It's either going to complete me or destroy me. There is no in between. For more minutes before I find out. I'm more nervous in this moment than I was in the courtroom 5 years ago. I grip the rubber starfish tightly in my hand. It's the only toy they had for sale at the gas station next door to my apartment. I could have had the cab driver take me to Target or Walmart, but they're both in the opposite direction of where I'm hoping Diem still lives, and I can't afford that much cab fare. After I got hired at the grocery store today, I walked home and took a nap. I didn't want to show up while Diem wasn't at Grace and Patrick's, and if Amy is right and Ledger doesn't have kids, it's a reasonable assumption that the little girl he coaches in t-ball is my daughter. And judging by the amount of Gatorade he bought, he was preparing for a long day with a lot of teams, which, using deductive reasoning, would mean it would be hours before Diem was back home. I waited as long as I could. I know the bar opens at 5, which means Ledger will likely be taking Diem home before then, and I really don't want Ledger to be there when I arrive, so I timed my cab ride to get me there at 5:15. I didn't want to arrive later than that because I don't want to show up when they're having dinner, or after she's gone to bed. I want to do everything right. I don't want to do anything that will make Patrick or Grace feel more threatened by my presence than they probably already will be. I don't want them to ask me to leave before I can even plead my case. In a perfect world, they'll open their front door for me and allow me to reunite with the daughter I've never held. In a perfect world, their son would still be alive. I wonder what I'll see in their eyes when they find me at their front door. Will it be shock? Hatred? How much does Grace despise me? I try to put myself in Grace's shoes sometimes. I try to imagine the hatred she holds for me, what it must feel like from her perspective. Sometimes I lie in bed and close my eyes and try to justify all the reasons this woman is keeping me from knowing my daughter so that I don't hate her back. I think, Kenna, imagine your Grace. Imagine you have a son. A beautiful young man that you love more than life, more than any afterlife. And he's handsome, and he's accomplished. But most importantly, he's kind. Everyone tells you this. Other parents wish their children could be more like your son. You smile because you're proud of him. You're so proud of him, even when he brings home his new girlfriend, the one you heard moaning too loud in the middle of the night. The girlfriend you saw looking around the room while everyone else was praying over dinner. The girlfriend you caught smoking at 11 at night on your back patio, but you didn't say anything. You just hoped your perfect son would outgrow her soon. Imagine you get a phone call from your son's roommate, asking if you know where he is. He was supposed to show up for work early that day, but for whatever reason he didn't show. Imagine your worry, because your son shows. He always shows. Imagine he doesn't answer his cell phone when you call to see why he didn't show. Imagine you start to panic as the hours stretch on. Normally, you can feel him, but you can't feel him today. You feel full of fear and empty of pride. Imagine you start to make phone calls. You call his college, you call his employer, you'd even call the girlfriend you don't much care for, if only you knew her number. Imagine you hear a car door slam, and you breathe a sigh of relief, only to fall to the floor when you see the police at your door. Imagine hearing things like "I'm sorry," and "accident," and "car wreck," and "didn't make it." Imagine yourself not dying in that moment. Imagine being forced to go on, to live through that awful night, to wake up the next day, to be asked to identify his body. His lifeless body. A body you created, breathed life into, grew inside of you, taught to walk and talk and run and be kind to others. Imagine touching his cold, cold face, your tears falling onto the plastic bag he's tucked into, your scream stuck in your throat, silent like the screams you've had in nightmares. And yet you still live. Somehow. Somehow you go on without the life you made. You grieve. You're too weak to even plan his funeral. You keep wondering why your perfect son, your kind son, would be so reckless. You are so devastated, but your heart keeps beating, over and over, reminding you of all the heartbeats your son will never feel. Imagine it gets even worse. Imagine that. Imagine when you think you're at rock bottom, you're introduced to a whole new cliff you get to fall off when you're told your son wasn't even driving the car, that was going way too fast on the gravel. Imagine being told the wreck was her fault. The girl who smoked the cigarette and didn't close her eyes during dinner prayer and moaned too loud in your quiet house. Imagine being told she was careless and so unkind with the life you grew. Imagine being told she left him there. Fled, they said. Imagine being told they found her the next day, in her bed, hungover, covered in mud and gravel and your kind son's blood. Imagine being told your perfect son had a perfect pulse and might have lived a perfect life, if only he could have had that wreck with a perfect girl. Imagine finding out it didn't have to be this way. He wasn't even dead. 6 hours they estimated he had lived. Several feet he had crawled, searching for you. Needing your help. Bleeding. Dying. 4 hours. Imagine finding out that the girl who moaned too loud and smoked the cigarette on your patio at 11 o'clock at night could have saved him. 1 phone call she didn't make. 3 numbers she never dialed. 5 years she served for his life, like you didn't raise him for 18, watch him flourish on his own for 4, and maybe could have gotten 50 more years with him had she not cut them short. Imagine having to go on after that. Now imagine that girl, the one you hoped your son would grow out of. Imagine after all the pain she's caused you, she decides to show back up in your life. Imagine she has the nerve to knock on your door. Imagine she smiles in your face. Asks about her daughter. Expects to be a part of the tiny little beautiful life your son miraculously left behind. Just imagine it. Imagine having to look into the eyes of the girl who left your son to crawl several feet during his death while she took a nap in her bed. Imagine what you would say to her after all this time. Imagine all the ways you could hurt her back. It's easy to see why Grace hates me. The closer I get to their house, the more I'm starting to hate me too. I'm not even sure why I'm here without being more prepared. This isn't going to be easy, and even though I've been preparing myself for this moment every day for 5 years, I've never actually rehearsed it. The cab driver turns the car onto Scotty's old street. I feel like I'm sinking into the back seat with a heaviness unlike anything I've ever experienced before. When I see their house, my fear becomes audible. I make a noise in the back of my throat that surprises me, but it's taking all the effort inside me to keep my tears at bay. DM could be inside that house right now. I'm about to cross a yard that DM has played in. I'm about to knock on a door that DM has opened. $12 even, the driver says. I fish $15 out of my pocket and tell him to keep the change. I feel like I float out of the car. It's such a weird feeling. I glance into the back seat to make sure I'm not still sitting there. I contemplate asking the driver to wait, but that would be prematurely admitting defeat. I'll figure out how to get home later. Right now, I cling to the impossible dream that it'll be hours before I'm asked to leave. The driver pulls away as soon as I close the door, and I'm left standing on the opposite side of the street from their house. The sun is still hanging bright in the western sky. I wish I'd have waited until dark. I feel like an open target. Vulnerable to whatever is about to come at me. I want to hide. I need more time. I haven't even practiced what I'm going to say yet. I've thought about it constantly, but I've never practiced out loud. My breaths become harder and harder to control. I put my hands on the back of my head and breathe in and out, in and out. Their living room curtains aren't open, so I don't feel like my presence is known yet. I sit down on the curb and take a moment to gather myself before walking over there. I feel like my thoughts are scattered at my feet and I need to pick them up one at a time and place them in order. 1. Apologize. 2. Express my gratitude. 3. Beg for their mercy. I should have dressed better. I'm in jeans and the same Mountain Dew t-shirt I had on yesterday. It was the cleanest outfit I had, but now that I'm looking down at myself, I want to cry. I don't want to meet my daughter for the first time while wearing a Mountain Dew t-shirt. How are Patrick and Grace expected to take me seriously when I'm not even dressed seriously? I shouldn't have rushed over here. I should have given this more thought. I'm starting to panic. I wish I had a friend. Nicole? I turn toward the sound of his voice. I crane my neck until my eyes meet Ledger's. Under normal circumstances, seeing him here would shock me, but I'm already at max capacity for things to feel, so my thought process is more along the lines of an apathetic great. Of course. There's a sharp intensity in the way he's looking at me that sends a chill up my arms. What are you doing here? He asks. Fuck. 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 Nothing. Fuck. My eyes flicker across the street. Then I look behind Ledger, at what I'm assuming is his house. I remember Scotty saying Ledger grew up across the street from him. What are the odds that he would still live here? I have no idea what to do. I stand up. My feet feel like weights. I look at Ledger, but he's no longer looking at me. He's looking across the street at Scotty's old house. He runs a hand across his jaw, and there's a fresh disturbing look on his face. He says, "Why were you staring at that house?" He's looking at the ground, then across the street, then toward the sun, but then his eyes land on me after I've failed to answer his question, and he's a completely different person than the man I saw at the grocery store today. He's no longer the fluid guy who moves around the bar like he's on rollerblades. Your name isn't Nicole. He says it like it's a depressing realization. I wince. He's put it all together. Now he looks like he wants to rip it all apart. He points at his house. Go. The word is sharp and demanding. I take a step into the street, away from him. I feel myself begin to tremble, just as he steps into the street and closes the gap between us. His eyes are on the house across the street again as he reaches his arm around me, pressing a firm hand into my lower back. He begins pushing me along with him as he points toward the house opposite where my daughter lives. Get inside before they see you. I expected he'd eventually put the pieces together. I just wish he would have made the connection last night. Not right now, when I'm only 15 feet away from her. I look at his house, then look at Patrick and Grace's house. I have no method of escaping him. The last thing I want to do right now is cause a scene. My goal was to arrive peacefully and make this go as smoothly as possible. Ledger seems to want the opposite. Please leave me alone, I say through clenched teeth. This is none of your business. The fuck it isn't, he hisses. Ledger, please. My voice shakes from both fear and tears. I'm scared of him, scared of this moment, scared of the idea that this is going to be so much more difficult than I feared. Why else would he be pushing me away from their property? I look back at Patrick and Grace's house, but my feet keep moving toward Ledger's house. I would put up a fight, but at this point, I'm no longer sure I'm ready to face the Landrys. I thought I was ready when I got into the cab earlier, but now that I'm here and Ledger is mad, I'm absolutely not ready to face them. It's obvious from the last few minutes that my arrival might have been somewhat anticipated and is not at all welcomed. They were likely notified when I was released into transitional housing. They had to be expecting this to happen eventually. My feet are no longer weights. I feel like I'm floating again, high in the air like a balloon, and I'm following Ledger as if he's pulling me along by a string. I feel embarrassed to be here. Embarrassed enough to follow behind Ledger like I have no voice or thoughts of my own. I certainly don't have any confidence in this second. And my shirt is too stupid for a moment of this magnitude. I'm stupid for thinking this was the way to go about it. Ledger closes his door once we're inside his living room. He looks disgusted. I don't know if it's at the sight of me, or if he's thinking about last night. He's pacing the living room, one palm pressed against his forehead. Is that why you showed up at my bar? You were trying to trick me into leading you to her? No, my voice is pathetic. He slides his hands down his face in frustration. He pauses and then just mutters, "God damn it." He is so mad at me. Why do I always make the worst decisions? You've been in town for one day. He swipes keys off a table. You really thought this was a good idea? Showing up this soon? This soon? She's 4 years old. I clench an arm over my churning stomach. I don't know what to do. What do I do? What can I do? There has to be something. Some kind of compromise. They can't just collectively decide what's best for DM without consulting me. Can they? They can. I'm the unreasonable one in this scenario. I've just been too scared to admit it. I want to ask him if there's anything I can do to get them to hear me out, but the way he's glaring at me makes me feel completely in the wrong. I begin to wonder if I'm even in a position to ask questions. His focus falls to the rubber starfish in my hand. He walks over to me and holds out his hand. I place the starfish in his palm. I don't know why I hand it over. Maybe if he sees I showed up with a toy, he'll know I'm here with good intentions. Really? A teething ring? He tosses it on his couch like it's the stupidest thing he's ever seen. She's 4. He walks toward his kitchen. I'm taking you home. Wait until I pull my truck into the garage. I don't want them to see you. I no longer feel like I'm floating. I feel heavy and frozen, like my feet are trapped in the concrete slab of his house. I glance out the living room window toward Patrick and Grace's house. I'm so close. All that separates us is a street. An empty street with no traffic. It's clear to me what's going to happen next. Patrick and Grace want nothing to do with me, to the point Ledger knew to intercept my arrival. This means there won't be any negotiating. The forgiveness I was hoping had found its way to them never made it here. They still hate me. Apparently, so does everyone else in their lives. The only way I'm going to be able to see my daughter is if, by some miracle, I can take it through the court system. And that's going to take money I don't yet have in years I can't bear the thought of passing by. I've already missed so much. If I want to see DM at all, ever, this is my only chance. If I want the opportunity to beg Scotty's parents for forgiveness, it's now or never. Now or never. Ledger probably won't notice I'm not following him to his garage for another 10 seconds, at least. I might make it before he catches up to me. I slip outside and run as fast as I can across the street. I'm in their yard. My feet are sprinting across grass DM has played on. I'm beating on their front door. I'm ringing their doorbell. I'm trying to look through the window to get a glimpse of her. Please, I whisper, knocking harder. My whisper turns into panic as I hear Ledger approaching me from behind. I'm sorry. I yell, beating on the door. My voice is a fearful plea now. I'm sorry, please let me see her. I'm being pulled, and then carried, back to the house across the street. Even through my struggle to get out of his arms, I'm staring at that front door as it gets smaller and smaller, hoping for even a half-second glimpse of my little girl. I don't see any movement at all in their house before I'm no longer outside. I'm back inside Ledger's house, being dropped onto his couch. He's holding his phone, pacing his living room as he dials a phone number. It's only 3 digits. He's calling the police. I panic. No, plead. No. I lunge across his living room in an attempt to grab at his phone, but he just puts a hand on my shoulder and steers me back to the couch. I sit down and bury my elbows into my knees, bringing my fingers to a shaky point against my mouth. Please don't call the police. Please. I sit still, wanting to appear unthreatening, hoping he just looks me in the eye long enough to feel my pain. His eyes meet mine just as tears begin to fall down my cheeks. He pauses before completing the call. He stares me down, studying me. Searching my face for a promise. I won't come back. If he calls the police, this will not look good for me. I can't have anything added to my record, even though I've broken no laws that I know of. But just being here unwanted is enough of a mark against me. He takes a step closer. You cannot come back here. Swear to me we'll never see you again, or I'll call the police right now. I can't. I can't promise him that. What else is there in my life other than my daughter? She's all I have. She's why I'm still alive. This can't be happening. Please, I cry, not knowing what I'm even begging for. I just want someone to listen to me. To hear me out. To understand how much I'm suffering. I want him to be the man I met in the bar last night. I want him to pull me to his chest, to make me feel like I have an ally. I want him to tell me it's going to be okay, even though I know with everything in me that it will never, ever be okay. The next several minutes are a defeated blur. I'm a mess of emotions. I get into Ledger's truck, and he drives me away from the neighborhood my daughter has been raised in her whole life. I'm finally in the same town as her after all these years, but I've never felt farther away from her than I do in this moment. I press my forehead to the passenger window and I close my eyes, wishing I could start over from the beginning. The very beginning. Or at least fast forward to the end.
Chapter 12. Ledger. It's typical for people to be praised in death. Heralded to the point of heroism sometimes. But nothing anyone said about Scotty was embellished for the sake of remembering him fondly. He was everything everyone said about him. Nice, funny, athletic, honest, charismatic, a good son. A great friend. Not a day goes by that I don't wish I could have traded places with him, in life and in death. I'd give up the life I've been living in an instant if it meant he could have just one day with DM. I don't know that I'd be this angry, this protective over DM, if Kenna had just simply caused the accident. But she did so much more than that. She was driving when she shouldn't have been, she was speeding, she was drinking, she flipped the car. And then she left. She left Scotty there to die, and she walked home and crawled into bed because she thought she could get away with it. He's dead because she was scared she'd get in trouble. And now she wants forgiveness. I can't think about the details of Scotty's death right now. Not with her sitting next to me in this truck, because I'd rather be dead than allow her the satisfaction of knowing DM. If it means driving us both off a bridge, I might just be vengeful enough to do that right now. The fact that she thought it would be okay to show up is baffling to me. I'm pissed she's here, but I think my anger is amplified by the knowledge that she knew who I was last night. When we kissed, when I held her. I shouldn't have ignored my gut. There was something off about her. She doesn't look like the Kenna I saw in the articles 5 years ago. Scotty's Kenna had long blonde hair. But I never really looked at her face back then. I never met her in person, but I feel like even just seeing a mug shot of the girl who killed my best friend should have stuck in my head more. I feel stupid. I'm angry, I'm hurt, I feel taken advantage of. Even today in the store, she knew who I was, yet gave me no hint as to who she was. I crack my window to get some fresh air, hoping it'll calm me down. My knuckles are white as I grip the steering wheel. She's staring out the window, unresponsive. She may be crying. I don't know. I don't fucking care. I don't. She isn't the girl I met last night. That girl doesn't exist. She was pretending with me, and I fell right into her trap. Patrick expressed concern several months ago when we found out she was released. He thought this might happen, that she might show up wanting to meet DM. I even put in a Ring camera on my house that points at their front yard. It's how I knew someone was sitting on the curb. I told Patrick he was silly to worry. She wouldn't show up. Not after what she did. I gripped the steering wheel even tighter. Kenna might have brought DM into the world, but that's where her claim to DM ends. When her apartments come into view, I pull the truck into a spot and put it in park. I don't kill the engine, but Kenna doesn't make a move to exit my truck. I figured she'd jump out before I even came to a complete stop like she did last night, but it looks like there's something she wants to say. Or maybe she just dreads going into that apartment as much as she probably dreads staying in this truck. She's staring at her hands folded together in her lap. She brings her hand to the seatbelt and releases it, but when she's free from it, she remains in the same position. DM looks like her. I always assumed she did since I didn't see much of Scotty in DM's features, but until tonight I had no idea just how much she resembles her mother. They have the same reddish shade of brown hair, straight and flat, not a wave or a curl in sight. She has Kenna's eyes. Maybe that's why I saw red flags last night. My subconscious recognized her before I could. When Kenna's eyes slide over mine, I feel a tug of disappointment inside of me. DM looks so much like her when she's sad. It's like I'm looking into the future at who DM is going to someday be. I don't like that the one person I dislike the most in this world reminds me of the person I love the most. Kenna wipes her eyes, but I don't lean over and open the glove box to retrieve a napkin. She can use the Mountain Dew shirt she's been wearing for 2 days. I didn't know you before I showed up at your bar last night, she says with a trembling voice. I swear. Her head falls back against the headrest, and she stares straight ahead. Her chest rises with a deep inhale. She exhales at the exact moment my finger meets the unlock button. My cue for her to exit. I don't care about last night. I care about DM. That's it. I watch it tear as it skates down her jaw. I hate that I know what those tears taste like. I hate that part of me wants to reach over and wipe it away. I wonder if she cried as she was walking away from Scotty that night. She moves with a graceful sadness, leaning forward, pressing her face into her hands. Her movement fills my truck with the scent of her shampoo. It smells like fruit. Apples. I rest my elbow on my doorframe and lean away from her, covering my mouth and my nose with my hand. I look out my window, not wanting to know anything else about her. I don't want to know what she smells like, what she sounds like, what her tears look like, what her pain makes me feel like. They don't want you in her life, Kenna. A cry mixes with a gasp that sounds like it's filled with years of heartache when she says, "She's my daughter." Her voice decides to reconnect with her spirit in this moment. It's no longer a wisp of air escaping her mouth. It's full of panic and desperation. I grip my steering wheel, tapping it with my thumb while I think of how to say what I need for her to understand. DM is their daughter. Your rights were terminated. Get out of my truck, and then do us all a favor and go back to Denver. I don't know if the sob that escapes her is even real. She wipes her cheeks and then opens the door and steps out of my truck. She faces me before closing the door, and she looks so much like DM, even her eyes have grown a shade lighter like DM's do when she cries. I feel that look deep within me, but I know it's only because of how closely she resembles DM. I'm hurting for DM. Not for this woman. Kenna looks torn between walking away, responding to me, or screaming. She hugs herself and looks at me with two huge, devastated eyes. She tilts her face up toward the sky for a second, inhaling a shaky breath. "Fuck you, Ledger." The sting of agony in her voice makes me flinch internally, but I remain as stoic as possible on the outside. Her words weren't even a yell. They were just a quiet and piercing statement. She slams my truck door, and then slaps my window with both of her palms. "Fuck you." I don't wait for her to say it a third time. I throw the truck in reverse and pull back onto the street. My stomach is in a knot that feels tethered to her fist. The farther I get from her, the more I feel it unravel. I don't know what I expected. I've had this vision of her in my head all these years. A girl with no remorse for what she's done. A mother with no attachment to the child she brought into the world. 5 years of preconceived yet solid notions aren't easy to let go of. Kenna has been one way and one way only in my mind. Unremorseful. Uninvolved. Uncaring. Unworthy. I can't reconcile the emotional turmoil she seems to suffer from not being part of DM's life with the lack of regard she held for Scotty's life. I drive away while thinking of a million things I should have said. A million questions I still don't have answers to. Why didn't you call for help? Why did you leave him there? Why do you think you deserve to cause another upheaval in the lives you've already destroyed? Why do I still want to hug you?
Chapter 13. Kenna. I feel like I'm living my worst-case scenario. Not only did I not get to meet my daughter today, but the only person who might have been able to lead me to her is now enemy number 1. I hate him. I hate that I let him touch me last night. I hate that in the brief time I spent with him yesterday, I gave him all the ammunition to label me a liar, a whore, an alcoholic. As if murderer wasn't enough. He's going to go straight to Grace and Patrick and reinforce their hatred for me. He's going to help them build an even sturdier, taller, thicker wall between me and my daughter. I have no one on my side. Not a single person. Hi. I pause halfway up the stairwell. There's a teenage girl sitting at the top of the stairs. She has Down syndrome, and she's smiling at me adorably, like this isn't the worst day of my life. She's wearing the same type of work shirt that Amy had on at the grocery store. She must work there. Amy said they give grocery bagger positions to people with special needs. I wipe tears from my cheeks and mutter, "Hi," and then sidestep around her. I would normally make more of an effort to be neighborly, especially if I'm going to be working with this girl, But I have more tears in my throat than words. I open my apartment door, and once I'm inside, I slam it shut and fall face down onto my half-deflated mattress. I can't even say I'm back to square one. I feel like I'm at square -1 now. My door swings open, and I immediately sit up. The girl from the stairs walks into my apartment uninvited. Why are you crying? She closes the door behind her and leans against it, scanning my apartment with curious eyes. Why don't you have any stuff? Even though she just barged in without permission, I'm too sad to be upset about it. She doesn't have boundaries. Good to know. I just moved in, I say, explaining my lack of stuff. The girl walks to my refrigerator and opens it. She sees the half-eaten package of Lunchables I left this morning, and she grabs it. Can I have this? At least she waits for permission before she eats it. Sure. She takes a bite out of a cracker, but then her eyes get wide and she tosses the Lunchables on the counter. Oh, you have a kitten. She walks over to the kitten and picks her up. My mom won't let me have a kitten. Did you get it from Ruth? Any other time, I'd welcome her. Really? But I just don't have the strength to be friendly during one of the worst moments of my life. I need to have a decent breakdown, and I can't do that with her here. Can you please go? I say it as nicely as possible, but asking someone to leave you alone can never not sting. One time when I was like 5, I'm 17 now, but when I was 5, I had a kitten, but it got worms and died. I'm sorry. She still hasn't closed the refrigerator. What's her name? I haven't named her yet. Did she not hear me ask her to leave? Why are you so poor? What makes you think I'm poor? You don't have any food or a bed or stuff. I've been in prison. Maybe that'll scare her off. My dad is in prison. Do you know him? No. But I haven't even told you his name. I was in an all-female prison. Abel Darby. That's his name. Do you know him? No. Why are you crying? I get off the mattress and walk to the refrigerator and shut it. Did someone hurt you? Why are you crying? I can't believe I'm going to answer her. I feel like this makes me even more pathetic, to just vent to a random teenager who walked into my apartment without my permission. But it seems like it would feel good to say it out loud. I have a daughter, and no one will let me see her. Did she get kidnapped? I want to say yes, because sometimes it feels that way. No. My daughter lived with people while I was in prison, but now that I'm out, they don't want me to see her. But you want to? Yes. She kisses the kitten on top of its head. Maybe you should be glad. I don't really like little kids. My brother puts peanut butter in my shoes sometimes. What's your name? Kenna. I'm Lady Diana. Is that really your name? No, it's Lucy, but I like Lady Diana better. Do you work at the grocery store? I ask her, pointing at her shirt. She nods. I start work there on Monday. I've worked there for almost 2 years. I'm saving to buy a computer, but I haven't saved anything yet. I'm gonna go eat dinner now. She hands me the kitten and starts walking toward my door. I have some sparklers. When it gets dark later, do you want to light them with me? I lean against my counter and sigh. I don't want to say no, but I also have a feeling my breakdown is going to last at least until morning. Maybe another time. Lady Diana leaves my apartment. I lock the door this time, and then I immediately grab my notebook and write a letter to Scotty because it's the only thing that can prevent me from crumbling. Dear Scotty. I wish I could tell you what our daughter looks like, but I still have no idea. Maybe it's my fault for not being honest with Ledger about who I was last night. He seemed to take that as some type of betrayal when he realized who I was today. I didn't even get to see your parents because he was so angry I was there. I just wanted to see our daughter, Scotty. I just wanted to look at her. I'm not here to take her from them, but I don't think Ledger or your parents have any idea what it's like to carry a human inside of you for months, only to have that tiny little human ripped away from you before you even get to meet them. Did you know that when an incarcerated woman gives birth, if they're almost finished with their sentence, they sometimes get to keep their babies with them? This mostly happens in jails, where the sentences are shorter. It sometimes happens in prisons, but it's rare. In my case, I was just beginning my sentence when I gave birth to DM, which made it to where she wasn't allowed to stay with me in the prison. She was a preemie, and as soon as she was born, they noticed her breathing wasn't where they wanted it to be, so they immediately whisked her away and transferred her to the NICU. They gave me an aspirin, some oversized pads, and eventually took me back to the facility with empty arms and an empty womb. Depending on the circumstances, some mothers are allowed to pump, and their breast milk is stored and delivered to their baby. I wasn't one of the lucky ones. I wasn't allowed to pump, and I wasn't allowed anything that would help my milk dry up. 5 days after DM was born, I was in the prison library, crying in a corner because my milk had come in, my clothes were soaking wet, and I was still emotionally devastated and physically spent. That's when I met Ivy. She had been there for a while, knew all the guards well, all the rules, how far she could bend them and who would let her. She saw me crying while holding a book about postpartum depression. Then she saw my soaking wet shirt, so she took me to a bathroom and helped me clean up. She meticulously folded up paper towels into squares and handed them to me one by one while I layered them inside my bra. "Boy or girl?" she asked. "Girl." "What did you name her?" "DM." "That's a good name. A strong name. She healthy?" "She was a preemie, so they took her as soon as she was born. But a nurse said she was doing well." Ivy winced when I said that. "They gonna let you see her?" "No. I don't think so." Ivy shook her head, and I didn't know it then, but Ivy had a way of communicating entire conversations through all the different ways she shook her head. I'd slowly learned them over the years, but that day, I didn't know the way she shook her head translated to, "Those bastards." She helped me dry my shirt, and when we got back to the library, she sat me back down and said, "Here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna read every book in this library. Pretty soon you'll start to live in the lavish worlds inside these books, rather than the bleak world inside this prison." I was never a big reader. I didn't like her plan. I nodded, but she could tell I wasn't listening to her. She pulled a book off the shelf and handed it to me. "They took your baby from you. You won't ever get over that. So, you decide right now, right here. Are you gonna live in your sadness or are you gonna die in it?" That question punched me in my stomach, the stomach that no longer contained my daughter. Ivy wasn't giving me a pep talk. In a lot of ways, it was the opposite. She wasn't saying I would move past what I was feeling, or that things would get easier. She was telling me this was it, the misery I felt was my new normal. I could either learn to live with it or I could let it consume me. I swallowed and said, "I'm gonna live in it." Ivy smiled and squeezed my arm. "There you go, Mama." Ivy didn't know it, but she saved me that day with her brutal honesty. She was right. My normal would never be the same. It hadn't been the same since I lost you, and losing our daughter to your parents just pushed me even further from center. The way I felt when they took her from me back then is the exact same defeated misery I feel right now. Ledger has no idea how much his actions tonight have broken the last few pieces of me. Ivy has no idea how much her words from almost 5 years ago are still somehow saving me. Maybe that's what I'll name the kitten. Ivy. Love. Kenna.
Chapter 14. Ledger. I've received 3 calls from Patrick on my drive back to the house, but I haven't answered any of them because I'm too angry at Kenna to have a conversation about her over the phone. I was hoping the Landrys didn't hear her beating on their door, but it's obvious they did. Patrick is waiting in my yard when I pull back into my driveway. He's talking before I even get out of the truck. What does she want? He asks. Grace is a mess. Do you think she's going to try to fight the termination? The lawyer said it would be impossible. He's still spitting questions at me as he follows me into the kitchen. I toss my keys on the table. I don't know, Patrick. Should we get a restraining order? I don't think you have grounds to do that. She hasn't threatened anyone. He paces the kitchen, and I watch as he seems to grow smaller and smaller. I pour him a glass of water and hand it to him. He downs the whole thing and then takes a seat on one of the bar stools. He drops his head into his hands. The last thing DM needs is for that woman to be in and out of her life. After what she did to Scotty, we can't. She won't show up here again, I say. She's too afraid of having the cops called on her. My comment only heightens his worry. Why? Is she trying to keep her record clean in case she can take us to court? She lives in a shithole. I doubt she has money to hire an attorney. He stands up. She's living here? I nod. Paradise Apartments. I don't know how long she plans to stay. Shit, he mutters. This is going to destroy Grace. I don't know what to do. I don't have any advice for him. As involved as I am in her life, I'm not DM's father. I haven't been the one raising her since she was born. This isn't my fight, even though I've somehow immersed myself in the middle of it. I may not have legal say, but I have opinions. Strong ones. As much as the entire situation doesn't have one single positive outcome for all parties involved, the simple truth is that being a part of DM's life is a privilege, and Kenna lost that privilege the night she decided her freedom was worth more than Scotty's life. Grace isn't strong enough to face Kenna. Patrick may not be strong enough either, but Patrick has always made sure to at least pretend to be as strong as Grace needs him to be. He'd never act this distraught in front of Grace. He saves this side of himself for the moments Scotty's death gets to be too much. The moments he needs to escape and cry alone in my backyard. Sometimes I can see them both start to unravel. It always happens in February, the month of Scotty's birthday. But then DM's birthday comes around in May, and it breathes new life back into them. That's what Kenna needs to understand. Grace and Patrick are only alive because of DM. She's the thread that keeps them from unraveling. There's no room for Kenna in this picture. Some things can be forgiven, but sometimes an action is so painful the memory of it can still crush a person 10 years down the road. Patrick and Grace get by because DM and I help them forget about what happened to Scotty long enough for them to get through each day. But if Kenna is around, his death will slap them in the face over and over and over again. Patrick's eyes are closed, and his hands are in a point against his chin. It looks like he's saying a silent prayer. I lean forward over the bar and try to keep my voice reassuring. DM is safe for now. Kenna is too scared to have the cops called on her and too broke to start a custody battle. You've got the advantage. I'm sure after tonight she'll cut her losses and head back to Denver. Patrick stares at the floor for about 10 seconds. I can see the weight of everything he's been through settled squarely on his shoulders. I hope so, he says. He heads for the front door, and once he's gone, I close my eyes and exhale. Every reassuring thing I just said to him was a lie. Based on what I know of Kenna now, however little knowledge that may be, I get the feeling this is far from over. You seem distracted, Roman says. He takes a glass from me and starts pouring a beer a customer has had to order from me 3 times already. Maybe you should take a break. You're slowing us down. I'm fine. Roman knows I'm not fine. Every time I look at him, he's watching me. Trying to figure out what's going on with me. I try to work for another hour, but it's Saturday night and it's loud, and even though we have a third bartender on Saturday nights, Roman is right. I'm slowing us down and making it worse, so I eventually go take the damn break. I sit on the steps in the alley, and I look up at the sky and wonder what the hell Scotty would do right now. He was always so level-headed. I don't think he got that from his parents, though. Maybe he did, I don't know. Maybe it's harder for them to think with a level head when they have such broken hearts. The door opens behind me. I look over my shoulder, and Roman is slipping outside. He sits next to me. He doesn't say anything. That's his way of opening the floor for me to speak. Kenna is back. Diem's mother? I nod. Shit. I rub my eyes with my fingers, relieving some of the pressure from the headache that's been building all day. I almost had sex with her last night. In my truck, after the bar closed. He has no immediate reaction to that. I glance over at him, and he's just staring blankly at me. Then he brings a hand to his face and rubs it over his mouth. You what? Roman stands up and walks out into the alley. He's staring at his feet, processing what I've just said. He looks as shocked as I felt when I put two and two together outside my house. I thought you hated Diem's mother. I didn't know she was Diem's mother last night. How could you not know? She was your best friend's girlfriend, right? I never met her. I saw a picture of her once. And maybe her mug shot, I think. But she had long blonde hair back then, looked completely different. Wow, Roman says. Did she know who you were? I still don't know the answer to that, so I just shrug. She didn't seem surprised to see me outside my house earlier. She just seemed upset. She showed up and tried to meet Diem today. And now, I shake my head. I fucked up, Roman. Patrick and Grace don't need this. Does she have any rights as a parent? Her rights were terminated because of the length of her prison sentence. We've just been hoping she wouldn't show up and want to be a part of her life. I mean, they feared it. We all did. I guess we just assumed we'd have some kind of warning. Roman clears his throat. I mean, to be fair, the woman gave birth to Diem. I think that was your warning. Roman likes to play devil's advocate in everything he does. It doesn't surprise me he's doing it now. What's the plan? Are they going to let Diem meet her mother now that they know she wants to be involved? It would be too hard on Patrick and Grace if Kenna were in their lives. Roman makes a face. How's Kenna going to take that? I don't really care how Kenna feels. No grandparent should be forced to have to set up visitation with their son's murderer. Roman raises a brow. Murderer. That's a bit dramatic. Her actions led to Scotty's death, sure. But the girl isn't some cold-blooded murderer. He kicks a pebble across the pavement. I always thought they were a little too harsh on her. Roman didn't know me back when Scotty died. He only knows the story. But if he had been around 5 years ago to see how it affected everyone, and he still somehow managed to say what he just said, I'd have punched him for it. But he's just being Roman. Devil's advocate. Uninformed. What happened when she showed up? What did they say to her? She didn't make it that far. I intercepted her in the street and dropped her off at her apartment. Then I told her to go back to Denver. Roman shoves his hands in his pockets. I watch his face, looking for the judgment. How long ago was this? He asks. It's been a few hours. You aren't worried about her? Who? Diem? He shakes his head with a small laugh, like I'm not following. I'm talking about Kenna. Does she have family here? Friends? Or did you drop her off alone after telling her to fuck off? I stand up and brush the back of my jeans. I know what he's getting at, but it's not my problem. At least that's what I keep telling myself. Maybe you should go check on her, he suggests. I'm not going to check on her. Roman looks disappointed. You're better than this. I can feel my pulse hammering in my throat. I don't know if I'm more pissed at him or at Kenna right now. Roman takes a step closer. She's responsible for the accidental death of someone she was in love with. As if that wasn't hard enough, she went to prison for it and was forced to give up her own child. She finally shows back up hoping to meet her, and you do God knows what with her in your truck, and then you prevent her from meeting her daughter, and then you tell her to fuck off. No wonder you've been slamming shit around all night. He walks back up the steps, but before he goes inside, he turns to me and says, "You're the reason I'm not dead in a ditch somewhere, Ledger. You gave me a chance when everyone else gave up on me. You have no idea how much I look up to you for that. But it's really hard to look up to you right now. You're acting like an asshole." Roman walks back inside the bar. I stare at the door after it closes, and then I hit it. Fuck. I start pacing in the alley. The more I pace, the guiltier I feel. I've been unequivocally on Patrick and Grace's side since the day I found out what happened to Scotty, but the more seconds that pass between Roman's words and my next decision, the more uneasy I feel about it all. There are two possibilities running through my head right now. The first is that Kenna is exactly who I've always believed her to be, and she showed up here selfishly, only thinking of herself and not at all thinking of what her presence would do to Patrick and Grace, or even DM. The second possibility is that Kenna is a devastated, grieving mother who simply aches for a child she desperately wants to do right by. And if that's the case, I don't know that I'm okay with how I left things tonight. What if Roman is right? What if I ripped away every ounce of hope she had left? If so, where does that leave her? Alone in an apartment with no future to look forward to? Should I be worried? Should I check on her? I pace the alley behind the bar for several more minutes, until I finally ask myself the question that keeps circling back around. What would Scotty do? Scotty always saw the best in people, even in those who I failed to find good in at all. If he were here, I can only imagine how he would be rationalizing all of this. You were too harsh, Ledger. Everyone deserves the benefit of the doubt, Ledger. You won't be able to live with yourself if she takes her own life, Ledger. Fuck, I mutter. Fuck, fuck, fuck. I don't know Kenna's personality at all. The reaction she had earlier could just be dramatics for all I know. But she could also be in a really dark place, and I can't sleep with that on my conscience. I feel unsettled and frustrated as I get in my truck and head back to her place. Maybe I should feel a sense of relief that I now think Roman was wrong, but I just feel pissed. Kenna isn't holed up inside her apartment. She's outside, looking like she doesn't have a care in this world. She's playing with fucking fireworks. Sparklers. Her and some girl, twirling around in the grass like she's a kid and not a grown-ass adult who, just hours earlier, acted like her world was coming to an end. She didn't see me pull up because her back was to the parking lot, and she hasn't noticed I've been sitting here for several minutes. She lights another sparkler for the girl, who then proceeds to make a mad dash with her sparkler and leave trails of light with her as she disappears around the corner. Once Kenna is alone, she presses her palms to her eyes and tilts her face up to the sky. She stands like that for a few seconds. Then she wipes her eyes with her t-shirt. The girl reappears and Kenna smiles, then the girl disappears, and Kenna lets her face fall back into a frown. She's just turning it on and off and on and off, and I don't like that. I like that she's pretending not to be sad every time that girl comes running back to her. Maybe Roman was right. The girl returns once more and hands her another sparkler. As she's lighting it, Kenna looks up and spots my truck. Her whole body seems to shrivel, but she forces a smile toward the girl and makes a motion for the girl to run around the building. As soon as the girl is gone again, Kenna begins to head in my direction. It's obvious I've been sitting here watching her. I don't even try to hide that. I unlock my door right before she reaches my truck and climbs inside. She slams the door. "Are you here with good news?" I shift in my seat. "No." She opens the door and starts to get out. "Wait, Kenna." She pauses, and then closes the door and remains in my truck. It's so quiet. She smells like gunpowder and matches, and there's a strange current inside this truck that's so palpable I expect the whole damn truck to explode. But it doesn't. Nothing happens. No one speaks. I finally clear my throat. Are you gonna be okay? My concern is buried beneath a stone-cold exterior, so I know my question seems forced, as if I don't care what the response might be. Kenna tries to get out of the truck again, but I grab her wrist. Her eyes meet mine. Are you gonna be okay? I repeat. She stares hard at me with her swollen, red eyes. Are you? She shakes her head, seemingly confused. Are you here because you're afraid I might kill myself? I don't like how she seems to want to laugh at my concern. Am I worried you aren't in a good headspace? I ask, reframing her question. Yeah. I am. I wanted to make sure you were okay. Her head tilts slightly to the right as she turns her whole body so that she's facing me in her seat. Her shoulder-length strands of straight hair lean with her. That's not it, she says. You're worried if I end my life, you'll be left feeling guilty that you've been so unbearably cruel to me. That's why you came back. You don't care if I actually kill myself, you just don't want to be the impetus for my decision. She shakes her head with a shallow laugh. You did it. You checked on me. Your conscience is clear now, goodbye. Kenna goes to open her door, and the girl she was lighting sparklers for suddenly appears at her passenger window. Her nose is pressed against the glass. Roll down this window, Kenna says to me. I turn my key so that I can roll down her window. The girl leans in, smiling at us. Are you Kenna's dad? Her question is so out of left field, I can't help but laugh. Kenna laughs too. DM has Scotty's laugh and smile. Kenna's laugh is her own. One I haven't heard before this second. One I want to hear again. He's definitely not my dad, Kenna says. She cuts her eyes to mine. He's the guy I told you about earlier. The one keeping me from my little girl. Kenna opens her door and hops out. She slams my truck door, and then the teenage girl leans in the passenger window and says, "Jerk." Kenna grabs the girl's hand and pulls her away from the truck. Come on, Lady Diana. He's not on our side. Kenna walks away with the girl and she doesn't look back, no matter how much I want her to and don't want her to, and fuck, my brain is a pretzel. I'm not sure I could be on her side even if I wanted to be. This whole situation contains so many nooks and crannies and corners I get the feeling choosing sides is going to be the downfall of all of us.
Chapter 15. Kenna. Here's the thing. It shouldn't matter if a mother isn't perfect. It shouldn't matter if she's made one big, horrible mistake in the past, or a lot of little ones. If she wants to see her child, she should be allowed to see her, even if it's just once. I know from experience that if you're going to grow up with an imperfect mother, it's better to grow up knowing your imperfect mother is fighting for you than to grow up knowing she doesn't give a shit about you. There were 2 years of my life, not consecutive, that were spent in foster care. My mother wasn't an addict or an alcoholic. She just wasn't a very good mother. Her neglect was validated when I was 7 and she left me alone for a week, when some guy she met at the dealership where she worked offered to fly her to Hawaii. A neighbor noticed I was home alone, and even though my mother told me to lie if anyone asked, I was too scared to lie when the social worker showed up at our door. I was placed into a foster family for 9 months while my mother worked to get her rights back. There were a lot of kids and a lot of rules, and it felt more like a strict summer camp. So when my mother finally regained custody of me, I was relieved. The second time I was placed in foster care, I was 10. I was the only foster child, placed with a woman in her 60s named Mona, and I stayed with her for almost a year. Mona wasn't anything spectacular, but the simple fact that she watched movies with me every now and then, cooked dinner every night, and did laundry was more than my own mother ever did. Mona was average. She was quiet, she wasn't very funny, she wasn't even all that fun, but she was present. She made me feel taken care of. I realized during the year that I was with Mona that I didn't need my mother to be spectacular, or even great. I just wanted my mother to be adequate enough to not have the state intervene in her parenting. That isn't too much for a child to ask of the parent who gave them life. Just be adequate. Keep me alive. Don't leave me alone. When my mother regained custody of me for the second time and I had to leave Mona, it was different than the first time I was returned to her. I wasn't excited to see her. I had turned 11 while living with Mona, and I came home with all the appropriate emotions an 11-year-old would develop with a mother like mine. I knew that I was going back to an environment where I would have to fend for myself, and I wasn't happy. I was being returned to a mother who wasn't even adequate. Our relationship never got back on track after that. My mother and I couldn't have a conversation without it turning into a fight. After a few years of this, when I was around 14, she eventually stopped trying to parent me, and instead it felt like I had become her enemy. But I was self-sufficient by then and didn't need my mother coming in twice a week, and pretending she had any say over me when she knew nothing about my life, or who I was as a person. We lived together until I graduated high school, but we were not friends and there was no relationship between us whatsoever. When she spoke to me, her words were insults. Because of that, I eventually just stopped speaking to her. I preferred the neglect over the verbal abuse. By the time I met Scotty, it had been 2 years since I'd heard her voice. I thought I'd never speak to her again, not because we had some huge falling out, but because our relationship was a burden and I think we both felt like we'd been set free when that relationship broke down. I didn't realize how desperate I would one day become, though. We had gone almost 3 years without speaking when I reached out to her from prison. I was desperate. I was 7 months pregnant, Grace and Patrick had already filed for custody, and because of the length of my sentence, I found out they were also petitioning for termination of my parental rights. I understood why they were doing it. The baby would need somewhere to go, and I preferred the Landrys over anyone else I knew, especially my mother. But to find out they wanted to terminate my rights permanently was terrifying. That meant I wouldn't see my daughter at all. I wouldn't have say over her, even after my release. But because I had such a long sentence, and there was no one else I could grant custody of my daughter to, I had to reach out to the only family member who could possibly help me. I thought maybe, if my mother fought for visitation rights as a grandparent, I could at least be left with some control over what happened to my daughter in the future. And maybe if my mother had visitation rights with my daughter, she could bring my baby to the prison after she was born so I would at least be able to know her. When my mother walked into the visitation room that day, she had a smug smile on her face. It wasn't a smile that said, "I've missed you, Kenna." It was a smile that said, "This doesn't surprise me." She looked pretty, though. She was wearing a dress, and her hair had gotten so long since I'd last seen her. It was odd seeing her for the first time as her equal, rather than as a teenager. We didn't hug. There was still so much tension and animosity between us we didn't know how to interact. She sat down and motioned toward my stomach. "This your first?" I nodded. She didn't seem excited to be a grandmother. "I Googled you," she said. That was her way of saying I read what you did. I dug my thumbnail into my palm to stop myself from saying something I'd regret. But every word I wanted to say was a word I'd regret, so we sat there in silence for the longest time while I tried to figure out where to start. She tapped her fingers on the table, growing impatient with my silence. "So? Why am I here, Kenna?" She pointed at my stomach. "You need me to raise your child?" I shook my head. I didn't want her to raise my child. I wanted the parents who raised a man like Scotty to raise my child, but I also wanted to see my child, so as much as I wanted to get up and walk away from her in that moment, I didn't. No. The paternal grandparents are getting custody of her. But my mouth was dry. I could feel my lips sticking together when I said, "I was hoping you'd petition for visitation rights as the grandmother." My mother tilted her head. "Why?" The baby moved at that moment, almost as if she was begging me not to ask this woman to have anything to do with her. I felt guilty, but I was out of options. I swallowed and put my hands on my stomach. They want to terminate my rights. If they do that, I'll never get to see her. But if you have rights as a grandmother, you could bring her here to see me every now and then. I sounded like the 6-year-old version of myself. Scared of her, but still in need of her. It's a 5-hour drive, my mother said. I didn't know where she was going with that comment. I have a life, Kenna. I don't have time to take your baby on 5-hour road trips to see her mother in prison every week. It wouldn't have to be weekly. Just whenever you can. My mother shifted in her seat. She looked angry with me, or annoyed. I knew she'd be bothered by the drive, but I thought once she saw me, she'd at least think the drive was worth it. I was at least hoping she'd show up wanting to redeem herself. I thought maybe, after finding out she was going to be a grandmother, she'd feel like she got a do-over, and she'd actually try this time. I haven't received one phone call from you in 3 years, Kenna. Now you're asking for favors? I didn't get a single phone call from her either, but I didn't bring that up. I knew it would only make her angry. Instead, I said, please. They're going to take my baby. There was nothing in my mother's eyes. No sympathy. No empathy. I realized in that moment that she was glad she'd gotten rid of me and had no intention of being a grandmother. I'd expected it. I was just hoping she'd grown a conscience in the years since I'd last seen her. Now you'll know how I felt every time the state took you from me. I went through so much to get you back both times, and you never appreciated it. You never even said thank you. She really wanted a thank you? She wanted me to thank her for being so shitty at being a parent that the state took me from her twice? I stood up and left the room in that moment. She was saying something to me as I left, but I couldn't hear her because I was so angry at myself for being desperate enough to call her. She hadn't changed. She was the same self-centered, narcissistic woman I had grown up with. I was on my own. Completely. Even the baby still growing in my stomach didn't belong to me.
Chapter 16. Ledger. Patrick and I started building the swing set in my backyard today. Diem's birthday isn't for a few more weeks, but we figured if we could get it put together before her party, she and her friends would have something to play on. The plan sounded feasible, but neither of us knew building a swing set would be a lot like building an entire damn house. There are pieces everywhere, and without instructions, it's caused Patrick to mutter fuck at least 3 times. He rarely ever uses that word. We've avoided talk of Kenna up to this point. He hasn't brought it up, so I haven't brought it up, but I know it's all he and Grace have been thinking about since she showed up on our street yesterday. But I can tell the silence on that subject is about to end, because he stops working and says, "Welp." That's always the word Patrick uses before he's about to start a conversation he doesn't want to have, or if he's about to say something he knows he shouldn't say. I picked up on it when I was just a teenager. He'd walk into Scotty's room to tell me it was time for me to go home, but he'd never actually say what he intended to say. He'd just talk around it. He'd tap the door and say, "Welp. Guess you two have school tomorrow." Patrick sits in one of my patio chairs and rests his tools on the table. "It's been quiet today," he says. I've learned to decipher the things he doesn't say. I know he's referring to the fact that Kenna hasn't shown back up. "How's Grace?" "On edge," he says. "We spoke to our lawyer last night. He assured us there's nothing she can legally do at this point. But I think Grace is more concerned she'll do something stupid, like swipe Diem from the t-ball field when none of us are looking. Kenna wouldn't do that." Patrick laughs half-heartedly. "None of us know her, Ledger. We don't know what she's capable of. I know her better than he thinks I do, but I'll never admit that. But Patrick may also be right. I know what it's like to kiss her, but I have no idea who she is as a human. She seems to have good intentions, but I'm sure Scotty thought the same thing about her before she walked away from him when he needed her the most. I'm getting loyalty whiplash. One minute I feel horrible for Patrick and Grace. The next, I feel horrible for Kenna. There has to be a way everyone can compromise without DM being the one to suffer. I take a drink of water to pad the silence, and then I clear my throat. Are you at all curious about what she wants? What if she's not trying to take DM? What if she just wants to meet her? Not my concern, Patrick says abruptly. What is? Our suffering is my concern. There's no way Kenna Rowan can fit into our lives, or DM's life, without it affecting our sanity. He's focusing on the ground now, as if he's working all this out in his head as it's coming out of his mouth. It's not that we think she'd be a bad mother. I certainly don't think she'd be good. But what would this do to Grace if she were to have to share that little girl with that woman? If she had to look her in the eye every week? Or worse, what if Kenna somehow made a judge feel sorry for her and her rights were reinstated? Where would that leave Grace and me? We already lost Scotty. We can't lose Scotty's daughter too. It's not worth the risk. I get what Patrick is saying. Completely. But I also know that after getting to know Kenna just over the last couple of days, the hatred I had for her is starting to turn into something else. Maybe that hatred is turning into empathy. I feel like that could possibly happen to Patrick and Grace if they gave her a chance. Before I can even think of something to say, Patrick reads the expression on my face. She killed our son, Ledger. Don't make us feel guilty for not being able to forgive that. I wince at Patrick's response. I've somehow hit a nerve with my silence, but I'm not here to make him feel guilty for the decisions they've made. I would never do that. I want her out of our lives and out of this town, Patrick says. We won't feel safe until both of those things happen. Patrick's whole mood has changed. I feel guilty for even suggesting they entertain Kenna's reasoning. She got herself here, and instead of expecting everyone in Scotty's life to conform to her situation, the easier and less damaging thing would be for her to accept the consequences of her actions and respect the decision Scotty's parents have made. I wonder what Scotty would have wanted if he could have seen this outcome. We all know the wreck, while preventable, was also an accident. But was he mad at her for leaving him? Did he die hating her? Or would he be ashamed of his parents, and me, for keeping Kenna from DM? I'll never have that answer, and neither will anyone else. It's why I always find something else to focus on when I start wondering if we're all going against what Scotty would have wanted. I lean back in the patio chair and stare at the jungle gym that will hopefully start to take shape soon. As I stare at it, I think of Scotty. This is exactly why I tore it down. Scotty and I smoked our first cigarette in that jungle gym, I say to Patrick. We were 13. Patrick laughs and leans back in his chair. He seems relieved that I've changed the subject. Where did you two get cigarettes at 13? My dad's truck. Patrick shakes his head. We drank our first beer there. We got high for the first time there. And if I remember correctly, Scotty had his first kiss there. Who is she? Patrick asks. Dana Freeman. She lived down the street. She was my first kiss too. That was the only fight me and Scotty ever got into. Who kissed her first? I did. Scotty swooped in like a fucking eagle and took her from me. Pissed me off, but not because I liked her. I just didn't like that she chose him over me. We didn't speak for like 8 whole hours. Well, it's only fair. He was so much better looking than you. I laugh. Patrick sighs, and now we're both thinking about Scotty and it's bringing the energy down. I hate how often this happens. I wonder if it'll ever start to happen less. Do you think Scotty wished I was different? Patrick asks. What do you mean? You were a great dad. I've worked in an office crunching sales figures my whole life. Sometimes I wondered if he ever wished I was something better, like a firefighter. Or an athlete. I wasn't the type of dad he could brag about. I feel bad that Patrick thinks Scotty would have wanted him to be any different than he was. I think back to the many conversations Scotty and I had about our future, and one of those conversations sticks out to me. Scotty never wanted to move away, I say. He wanted to meet a girl and have kids and take them to the movies every weekend and to Disney World every summer. I remember thinking he was crazy when he said that, because my dreams were way bigger. I told him I wanted to play football and travel the world and own businesses and have a steady cash flow. I wasn't about the simple life like he was, I say to Patrick. I remember, after I told him how important I wanted to be, he said, I don't want to be important. I don't want the pressure. I want to slide under the radar like my dad, because when he comes home at night, he's in a good mood. Patrick is quiet for a while, but then he says, "You're full of shit." He never said that. I swear, I say with a laugh. He said things like that all the time. He loved you just the way you were. Patrick leans forward and stares at the ground, clasping his hands together. Thank you for that. Even if it isn't true. It's true, I say, reassuring him. But Patrick still seems sad. I try to think of one of the lighter stories about Scotty. One time, we were sitting inside the jungle gym, and out of nowhere, this pigeon landed in the yard. It was only 3 or 4 feet away from us. Scotty looked at it and said, "Is that a fucking pigeon?" And I don't know why, maybe because we were both high, but we laughed so hard at that. We laughed until we cried. And for years, up until he died, every time we'd see something that didn't make sense, Scotty would say, "Is that a fucking pigeon?" Patrick laughs. That's why he always said that. I nod. Patrick starts laughing even harder. He laughs until he cries. And then he just cries. When the memories start to hit Patrick like this, I always walk away and leave him alone. He's not the type who wants comfort when he's sad. He just wants solitude. I go inside and close the door, wondering if it'll ever get better for him and Grace. It's only been 5 years, but will he still need to cry alone in 10 years? 20? I want so badly for them to heal, but the loss of a child is a wound that never heals. It makes me wonder if Kenna cries like Patrick and Grace do. Did she feel that kind of loss when they took DM from her? Because if she did, I can't imagine Grace and Patrick would willingly allow her to continue to feel it, since they know what it feels like firsthand.
Chapter 17. Kenna. Dear Scotty. I started my new job today. I'm here now, actually. I'm at orientation and it's really boring. I'm 2 hours into videos about how to properly bag groceries, stack eggs, keep meats separated, and I'm trying to keep my eyes open, but I haven't been sleeping well. Luckily, I figured out that the orientation videos still play if I minimize the video tab. I'm writing you this letter using Microsoft Word. I used the printer here to print off all the old letters I typed into Google Docs when I was in prison. I shoved them into my bag and put them in my employee locker to hide them because I doubt I'm supposed to be printing things. Almost everything I remember about you is documented. Every important conversation we had. Every impactful moment that happened after you died. I spent 5 years typing letters to you, trying to recall all the memories I had with you in case DM wants to know about you someday. I know your parents have more to share with her about you than I do, but I still feel like the part of you I knew is worth sharing. When I was walking around downtown the other day, I noticed the antique store was no longer there. It's a hardware store now. It made me think of the first time we went there and you bought me all those tiny little rubber hands. We were a few days from our 6-month anniversary, but we were celebrating it early because I had to work the weekend shift and wouldn't get off work in time for us to go out. We'd both said I love you by that point. We were past our first kiss, our first time to make love, our first fight. We had just eaten at a new sushi restaurant downtown and were browsing antique stores, mostly window shopping because it was still light out. We were holding hands, and every now and then you would stop and kiss me. We were in that sickening stage of relationships, the stage I'd never reached with anyone before you. We were happy, in love, full of hormones, full of hope. It was bliss. A bliss we thought would last forever. You pulled me into the antique store at one point during our walk and said, "Pick something out. I'll buy it for you. I don't need anything. This isn't about you. It's about me, and I want to buy you something." I knew you didn't have a lot of money. You were about to graduate college and you planned to start graduate school full-time. I was still working at dollar days, making minimum wage, so I walked toward the jewelry display, hoping I could find something cheap. Maybe a bracelet, or a pair of earrings. But it was a ring that caught my eye. It was dainty and gold and looked like it belonged on the finger of someone straight out of the 1800s. There was a pink stone in the center of it. You noticed the moment I spotted it because I sucked in a breath. "You like that one?" you asked. It was in a case with all the other rings, so you asked the guy behind the counter if we could see it. The man took it out and handed it to you. You slipped it on the ring finger of my right hand and it fit perfectly. "It's so pretty," I said. It was honestly the prettiest ring I'd ever seen. "How much is it?" you asked the guy. $4,000. I could probably knock a couple hundred off. It's been in the case for a few months. Your eyes bulged at that price. $4,000, you asked in disbelief. "Is it a fucking pigeon?" I sputtered laughter because I had no idea why you always said that phrase, but it was at least the third time I'd heard you say it. I also laughed because the ring was $4,000 freaking dollars. I'm not sure I'd ever had anything on my body worth $4,000. You grabbed my hand and said, "Hurry. Take it off before you break it." You gave it back to the man. There was a display of tiny rubber hands next to the register. They were little gag gifts that slipped onto the tips of fingers so you'd have 50 fingers instead of 10. You grabbed one and said, "How much are these?" The man said, $2. You bought me 10 of them. One for each finger. It was the stupidest gift anyone had ever given me, but by far my favorite. When we stepped out of the store, we were both laughing. $4,000, you muttered, shaking your head. Does that ring come with a car? Do all rings cost that much? Do I need to start saving for our engagement now? You were slipping the rubber hands on the tips of my fingers as you ranted about the price of jewelry. But your rant made me smile, because it's the first time you ever mentioned the word engagement. I think you noticed what you said because you got quiet after that. When all the rubber hands were on my fingers, I touched both of your cheeks. It looked so ridiculous. You were smiling when you wrapped your hands around my wrists and kissed my palm. Then you kissed the palms of all 10 of my rubber hands. "I have so many fingers now," I said. "How will you afford to buy rings for all 50 of my fingers?" You laughed and pulled me against you. "I'll figure out a way. I'll rob a bank. Or I'll rob my best friend. He'll be rich soon, that lucky bastard." You were referring to Ledger, although I'm not sure I knew that at the time, because I didn't know Ledger. He had just signed a contract with the Broncos. I knew very little about sports, though, and nothing about your friends. We were consumed by each other so much we hardly made time for anyone else. You were in class most days, and I worked most days, so the little time we were able to spend together, we spent together alone. I figured that would eventually change. We were just at points in our lives where we were each other's priority, and neither of us saw that as a bad thing because it felt so good. You pointed at something in the window of the store across the street and then you grabbed one of the tiny plastic hands, and you held it as we headed in that direction. I had this fantasy that you would someday propose to me and then we'd get married and have babies and raise them together in this town, because you loved it here, and I would have loved anywhere you wanted to be. But you died, and we didn't get to live out our dream. And now we never will, because life is a cruel, cruel thing, the way it picks and chooses who to bully. We're given these shitty circumstances and told by society that we, too, can live the American dream. But what they don't tell us is that dreams almost never come true. It's why they call it the American dream rather than the American reality. Our reality is that you're dead. I'm in orientation for a shitty job making minimum wage. And our daughter is being raised by people who aren't us. Reality is depressing as fuck. So is this job. I should probably get back to it. Love. Kenna. Amy put me on the floor after I finished the 3 hours of orientation videos. I was nervous at first because I was expecting to shadow someone my first day, but Amy said, "Make sure the heavy stuff goes on the bottom. Treat the bread and eggs like infants, and you'll be fine." She was right. I've been bagging groceries and carrying them out for customers for 2 hours now, and so far, it's just your average low-paying job. No one warned me there could be job hazards on the first day, though. That job hazard is named Ledger, and even though I haven't laid eyes on him, I just spotted his ugly orange truck in the parking lot. My pulse speeds up because I don't want him to make a scene. I haven't seen him since he showed up at my apartment Saturday night to check on me. I think I handled myself pretty well. He seemed remorseful for treating me the way he did, but I kept my cool and acted unfazed, even though his showing back up definitely fazed me. It gave me a little bit of hope. If he feels bad enough for how he treated me, maybe there's a chance he could eventually grow empathetic toward my situation. I'm sure it's a small chance, but it's still a chance. Maybe I shouldn't avoid him. Being in his presence might make him realize I'm not the monster he thinks I am. I walk back inside the store and return the grocery cart to the rack. Amy is behind the customer service counter. "Can I take a bathroom break?" "You don't have to ask permission to pee," she says. "Remember how we met? I fake pee every hour when I'm here. It's the only way I stay sane." I really like her. I don't have to use the restroom. I just want to walk around and see if I can spot Ledger. Part of me hopes he's here with DM, but I know he isn't. He saw me applying for a job here, which means he'll likely never bring DM inside this store ever again. I eventually find him in the cereal aisle. I was planning to just spy on him so I can keep tabs on him while he shops, but he's at the same end of the aisle I appear at, and he spots me as soon as I see him. We're just 4 feet apart from one another. He's holding a box of Fruity Pebbles. I wonder if those are for DM. "You got the job." Ledger says this without any hint as to whether he even cares that I got the job, or if he's bothered by it. I'm sure if he's that bothered by it, he would have shopped somewhere else today. It's not like he didn't know I was trying to get a job here. He's going to have to find a new store if it bothers him because I'm not going anywhere. I can't. No one else will hire me. I look up from the box of cereal in his hands and immediately wish I hadn't. He looks different today. Maybe it's the fluorescent lighting or the fact that when I'm in his presence, I'm attempting not to look at him too closely. But here in the cereal aisle, the lights seem to illuminate him. I hate that he looks better under fluorescent lighting. How is that even possible? His eyes are friendlier, his mouth is even more inviting, and I don't like that I'm thinking good things about the man who physically pulled me away from the house my daughter was in. I leave the cereal aisle with a new lump in my throat. I changed my mind, I don't want to be nice to him. He's already spent 5 years judging me. I'm not going to change his view of me in the aisle of a grocery store, and I get too flustered in his presence to give him any semblance of a good impression. I try to time things so that I'm not available when he checks out, but as karma would have it, the other grocery baggers on duty are all busy. I get called to his lane to bag his groceries, which means I'll have to walk them out to his truck and converse with him and be nice. I don't make eye contact with him, but I can feel him watching me as I separate his food into sacks. There's something intimate about knowing what everyone in this town is buying for their kitchens. I feel like I can almost define a person based on their groceries. Single women buy a lot of healthy food. Single men buy a lot of steak and frozen dinners. Large families buy a lot of bulk meat and produce. Ledger gets frozen dinners, steak, Worcestershire sauce, Pringles, animal crackers, Fruity Pebbles, milk, chocolate milk, and a lot more Gatorade. Based on his selections, I conclude he's a single guy who spends a lot of time with my daughter. The last items the cashier rings up are 3 cans of SpaghettiOs. I'm jealous he knows what my daughter likes, and that jealousy shows in the way I toss the cans into the sack and then into the cart with a thud. The cashier side-eyes me as Ledger pays for the groceries. Once he gets his receipt, he folds it up and puts it in his billfold while walking to the cart. I can get it. I have to do it, I say flatly. Store policy. He nods and then leads the way to his truck. I don't like that I still find him attractive. I try to look everywhere but at him as we make our way across the parking lot. When I was in his bar the other night, before I knew he was the owner, I couldn't help but notice how diverse the employees were. That made me appreciate whoever the owner was. The other 2 bartenders, Razy and Roman, are both black. One of the waitresses is Hispanic. I like that he's a figure in my daughter's life. I want her to be raised by good people, and even though I barely know Ledger, so far he seems like a decent human. When we reach his truck, Ledger takes the Gatorades and puts them in the back while I unload the rest of his groceries into the back seat opposite, the side where DM's booster seat is. There's a pink and white scrunchie on the floorboard. When I'm finished loading his sacks, I stare at the scrunchie for a few seconds and then reach for it. There's a strand of brown hair wrapped around it. I pull at the hair until it comes loose from the scrunchie. The strand is about 7 inches long and is the exact same color as mine. She has my hair. I feel Ledger approach me from behind, but I don't care. I want to climb into this back seat and stay here with her booster seat and her hair scrunchie, and see if I can find any other remnants of her that'll give me hints as to what she looks like and what kind of life she lives. I turn around, still staring at the scrunchie. Does she look like me? I glance up at him, and his eyebrows are drawn apart as he looks at me. His left arm is resting on the top of his truck, and I feel caged between him, the door, and the grocery cart.
Yeah,
she does. He doesn't say how she looks like me. Is it her eyes? Her mouth? Her hair? All of her. I want to ask him if we have similar personalities, but he doesn't know me at all. How long have you known her? He folds his arms over his chest and looks down at his feet like he doesn't feel comfortable answering these questions. Since they brought her home. The jealousy that rolls through me is almost audible. I suck in a trembling breath and push back my tears with another question. What's she like? That question makes him sigh heavily. Kenna. All he says is my name, but it's enough to know he's done answering my questions. He looks away from me and scans the parking lot. Do you walk to work? Convenient change of subject. Yes. He's looking at the sky now. It's supposed to storm this afternoon. Lovely. You could Uber. His eyes come back to mine. Did they have Uber before you? His voice trails off. Went to prison? I finish with a roll of my eyes. Yes. Uber existed. But I don't have a phone, so I don't have the app. You don't have a phone? I had one but I dropped it last month, and I can't get a new one until I get a paycheck. Someone uses a key fob to unlock the car a space over from us. I glance around and see Lady Diana walking toward the car with an older couple and a cart full of groceries. We aren't in their way, but I use it as an excuse to close his door. Lady Diana sees Ledger as she's opening the trunk. She grabs the first sack and mutters, "Jerk." It makes me smile. I glance at Ledger, and I think he might even be smiling. I don't like that he doesn't seem like an asshole. It would be a lot easier to hate him if he were an asshole. I'm keeping the scrunchie, I say as I turn the cart around. I want to tell him that if he's still going to insist on shopping here, he should bring my daughter next time. But when I'm in his presence, I can't decide if I should be polite because he's the only thing linking me to my daughter, or if I should be mean because he's one of the things keeping me from my daughter. Saying nothing when I want to say everything is probably my best bet for now. I glance back at him before I head into the store, and he's still leaning against his truck, watching me. I go inside and return the cart to the rack and then pull my hair up with DM's scrunchie and wear it for the rest of my shift.
Chapter 18. Ledger. There are a dozen chocolate cupcakes staring at me when I walk inside the bar. Damn it, Roman. Every week he goes to the bakery down the street and buys cupcakes. He only buys them so he'll have an excuse to see the woman who owns the bakery, but he doesn't even eat them. Which means that leaves me with the task of eating them. I usually take the ones that survive the night to DM. I grab one of the cupcakes just as Roman walks through the double doors from the back of the bar. Why don't you just ask her out? I've put on 10 pounds since you first saw her. Her husband might not like that, Roman says. Oh, yeah. She's married. Good point. I've never even spoken to her, you know. I just keep buying cupcakes from her because I think she's hot, and apparently I like to torture myself. You definitely enjoy self-torture. You still work here for some reason. Exactly, Roman says flatly. He leans against the counter. So? What's the update on Kenna? I look over his shoulder. Anyone else here yet? I don't want to talk about Kenna around anyone. The last thing I need is for it to get back to the Landrys that I've interacted with her outside of the one time they know of. No. Marian comes on at 7 and Razy is off tonight. I take a bite of the cupcake and talk with a mouthful. She works at the grocery store on Cantrell. She has no car. No phone. I'm starting to think she doesn't even have family. She walks to work. These cupcakes are fucking delicious. You should see the woman who bakes them, Roman says. Have DM's grandparents decided what to do? I put the other half of the cupcake back in the box and wipe my mouth with a napkin. I tried talking to Patrick about it yesterday, but he doesn't even want the topic up for discussion. He just wants her out of town and out of their lives. What about you? I want what's best for DM, I say immediately. I've always wanted what's best for DM. I just don't know if what I used to think was best for her is still what's best for her. Roman doesn't say anything. He's staring at the cupcakes. Then he says, fuck it, and he grabs one. You think she cooks as good as she bakes? Hopefully one day I find out. Almost 1 out of every 2 couples divorce, he says, his voice hopeful. I bet Whitney could find you a nice single girl to date. Fuck you, he mutters. I'd rather wait until Cupcake Girl's marriage falls apart. Does Cupcake Girl have a name? Everyone has a name. It's the slowest night we've had in a long time, probably because it's Monday and it's raining. I don't usually notice every time the door to the bar opens, but since there are only 3 customers right now, all eyes go to her when she slips inside and out of the rain. Roman notices her too. We're both staring in her direction when he says, I have a feeling your life is about to get incredibly complicated, Ledger. Kenna walks toward me, her clothes soaking wet. She takes the same seat she sat in the first time she was here. She pulls DM's scrunchie out of her hair and then leans over the bar and grabs a handful of napkins. Well, you were right about the rain, she says, drying her face and her arms. I need a ride home. I'm confused, because the last time she got out of my truck, she was so angry with me I was positive she'd never be inside of it again. From me? She shrugs. You. An Uber. A cab. I don't care. But first I want a coffee. I hear you guys carry caramel now. She's in a feisty mood. I hand her a clean rag and start making her a coffee while she dries off. I look at the time, and it's been at least 10 hours since I was in the store. Did you just now get off work? Yeah, someone called in, so I worked a double. The grocery store closes at 9, and it likely takes her an hour to walk home. You probably shouldn't be walking home this late. Then buy me a car, she retorts. I glance over at her, and she raises an eyebrow like that was a dare. I top her coffee with a cherry and slide it over to her. How long have you owned this bar? She asks. A few years. Didn't you used to play some kind of professional sport? Her question makes me laugh. Maybe because my short 2-year stint as an NFL player is usually the only thing people around here want to talk about with me, but Kenna makes it seem like a passing thought. Yeah. Football for the Broncos. Were you any good? I shrug. I mean, I made it to the NFL, so I didn't suck. But I wasn't good enough to get my contract renewed. Scotty was proud of you, she says. She looks down at her drink and cups her hands around it. She was pretty closed off the first night she came in, but her personality is starting to slip here and there. She eats her cherry and then takes a sip of the coffee. I want to tell her she can go upstairs to the apartment Roman stays in so she can dry her clothes, but it feels wrong being nice to her. It's been a constant battle in my head for the last couple of days, wondering how I can be attracted to someone I've hated for so long. Maybe it's because the attraction happened last Friday, before I knew who she was. Or maybe it's because I'm starting to question my reasons for having hated her for so long. You don't have friends in this town who can give you a ride home from work? Family? She sets down her coffee. I know 2 people in this town. One of them is my daughter, but she's only 4 and can't drive yet. The other one is you. I don't like that her sarcasm somehow makes her more attractive. I need to stop interacting with her. I don't need her to be here in this bar. Someone might see me talking to her, and word could get back to Grace and Patrick. I'll give you a ride home when you finish your coffee. I walk to the other end of the bar just to get away from her. Kenna and I head outside to my truck about half an hour later. The bar closes in an hour, but Roman said he'd take care of it. I just need to get Kenna out of the bar, and out of my presence so no one can tie us together. It's still raining, so I grab an umbrella and I hold it over her. Not that it'll make a huge difference. She's still soaking wet from her walk here. I open the passenger door for her, and she climbs inside the truck. It's awkward when we make eye contact, because there's no way we aren't both thinking about the last time we were together on this side of the truck. I shut her door and try not to think about that night, or what I thought of her, or how she tasted. Her feet are against the dash when I settle into the driver's seat. She's fidgeting with Diem's hair scrunchie as I pull onto the street. I can't stop thinking about what she said, about Diem being the only person in this town she knows besides me. If that's true, Diem isn't even really someone she knows. She just knows Diem is here and that she exists, but the only person she really knows in this town is me. I don't like that. People need people. Where's her family? Where's her mother? Why has none of her family tried to reach out and get to know Diem? I've always wondered why no one, not even another grandparent or aunt or uncle, has tried contacting Grace or Patrick about meeting Diem. And if she doesn't have a cell phone, who does she talk to? Do you regret kissing me? She asks. My focus swings from the road and over to her as soon as she asks that. She's staring at me expectantly, so I look at the road again, gripping my steering wheel. I nod, because I do regret it. Maybe not for the reasons she thinks I regret it, but I regret it all the same. It's quiet all the way to her apartment after that. I put my truck in park and glance over at her. She's looking down at the scrunchie in her hand. She slides it onto her wrist, and without even making eye contact with me, she mutters, "Thanks for the ride." She opens her door and is out of my truck before I find my voice to tell her good night.
Chapter 19.